Welcome to the Lookoff. I'm Brad Kotecki. Some people call me Brad. Joined tonight by Libby Lehman. You can just say like hi.
Libby's actually not here. We're just pretending.
We'll be throwing questions.
Glad to be here.
We'll be throwing questions to Libby and adding them in post. And we have Joe.
Let's go splice this together.
So, first episode, as you can probably tell, we're looking to have a podcast where we're going to talk about Cleveland Ultimate. The idea came up when we were talking about Winter League, a lot of content in Winter League. A lot of us spend several hours typing and not working to discuss Winter League. And so we thought it would be a fun idea to get together. We'll have different guests every week, maybe not every week, but rotating group of people, just something that we think will be a little bit of fun. Now, the podcast is called The Lookoff. To look off is to mislead by directing one's apparent attention away from one's true object of intent, which is a pretty fitting name for a podcast, we thought. Something where we'll probably just start talking about random shit, and we'll see how that goes. And to tie it into Cleveland, most Cleveland sports events are named after the event. We have the fumble, the drive before all of our time, the block, the shot, and the look-off kind of fits in there. Kind of a fun way to make fun of ourselves because we pretty much constantly look people off while we're playing. It happens in Ultimate. So I think that's it for now. Is there anything I'm missing you guys can think of? They're both shaking their heads, which works really well over audio.
I think we're good.
So the setting we're going to do, we're going to try and talk about each game for about 5 minutes. I think that'll put us in the 30 to 40 minute range for podcasts. So we'll put 5 minutes on the clock and live or die by that time, which ties us well into the first game. Jackie versus Andrew, a 16-15 win for Jackie, which ended pretty crazily. A run there at the end went into sudden death without a clock. So, Joe, big takeaways from that game.
Well, I think Jackie's team, we saw sort of some of the inexperience in playing in the Cleveland Winter League format. They have a lot of new players between Cole and Jackie, they're captains, but then also some other new Columbus recruits, Dan Yu, Crump, to name a few. And towards the end of that game, I think you really saw, I don't even know if they knew what the rules were for how the game ends and what the time situation is, if they knew that all they had to do was not throw a turnover to have any chance of not losing. But they did pretty much everything wrong that you can do in a game, and having been in that situation, I'm well aware of all the mistakes you can make, and they made all of them except for they held on Universe Point to win the game. So, I mean, you got to be pretty happy, I think, if you're Jackie's team, just to get out of there with a win, but I mean, that was an exciting way to start off the league.
They were up 5 with 7 minutes left.
Man.
Crazy run.
Yeah.
Crazy run. Pretty impressive. They ended up pulling it out. Libby, thoughts on that game?
I mean, I think kind of going off of what Joe was saying, I'll be interested to see how White kind of improves, again, based off of the format of the league and also kind of the mental stamina of the team. They went off right at the beginning and were down a couple breaks right off the start, and then kind of got their feet under them and then, went down late. So I think it'll be really a matter of their top of the roster being able to get things done when they need to. On the Orange side, I think there at the end, they definitely surprised everyone. They were down towards the bottom going into the power rankings before the league. I think the Sharon Evan duo in the handle set is going to be really effective. I think both players do a really good job of keeping the disc moving, but also are very comfortable leaving the handler set to be effective upfield, and I think that was very very powerful for them in that game.
So one thing to note was Jackie, of the 15 times that they were in the gen zone dictating gender, they ran 3 women, 13 times. Basically, the first 2 chances they had, they didn't. And for the remainder of the game, they ran 3 women whenever they could. I think that was probably more of a function of Andrew only having 3 women, but I'm curious to see whether they'll keep that up, because they had some success with it. They did all right they did better holding when they had 3 women playing, but I'll be interested to see what they do with that, because they were the only team that really heavily leaned into playing 3 women. So do you think that was just a numbers game? Do you think that is a trend we'll see them continue with?
I think, again, it probably goes off of their captains being new to the league, and I think a lot of other teams were sort of defaulting to what we know, and
different perspective.
Right. So kind of going in with a fresh face here a little bit. I think you're going to lean towards that 3-3 ratio. But I do think, kind of being in a similar spot as Andrew, I think most teams want to go 3-3, but numbers on the women's side are going to prove to be difficult, I think, probably from week to week to hold that up.
So in the long run, do we think Andrew's team or do we think Jackie's team making the playoffs, both of them missing out?
I think Jackie's team has a better shot for sure. I think they have a similar top end. They have a few of the top men in the league. Cole, Evan, a couple new faces to Cleveland. But I think the bottom end of the roster for White is going to win out in that matchup. And the way the game went earlier in the game, I think, is more indicative of how those teams are actually sort of would fare against each other than those last 5 points when White almost fell apart.
They do have Pretty Dude Dave.
Pretty Dude Dave
roster.
Can never bet against Pretty Dude Dave.
Could have used his veteran leadership at the end of the game there to know what the clock rules were, but I don't even think Lynch knew. So speaking of Lynch, game 2, Lynch's team won 15-9 against Tina. There's a lot to unpack with this game, but I guess my question, Libby, is do you think this says more about Lynch's team being good or Tina's team being bad?
I think that it was more indicative of the skills on Lynch's team. I think that they have a lot of players that can make big plays, but you didn't really even see that at all in the game. It was a lot of fundamental kind of grinding offense, so a lot of resets, a lot of getting the unders and then getting a quick dump. And so I think, if you start to pair that with some of those big plays, I think that they're going to be pretty dangerous.
Joe?
Yeah, I think I agree, but I think that Tina's team really didn't challenge them and really didn't challenge their top players in particular defensively. So it didn't feel like the defense from Tina's team was really ever kind of pushing and trying to create something. It felt pretty passive, and Lynch's team was able to just kind of take an easy option at almost all moments. And so it'll be interesting to see if a team that sort of tries to challenge them more and takes a little more risks defensively, if they can force Lynch's team to make more mistakes. But otherwise, I agree. I think Lynch's team looked pretty good, and Tina's team also looked not so good.
It's pretty funky throws throughout that whole game that they've got.
I mean, the big thing in that game is it was 6-5 at one point, and then I went to the bathroom or went to fill up my water bottle or something, and then it was 12-5, and that during that run, I mean, Tina's offense just couldn't get anything going. You have to credit the defense from Lynch's team as well, but week 1, it's hard to extrapolate either direction in that case. But that kind of run, it's just hard to come back and win a game after that.
So Tina's team seems like they have some pretty good cutters, some good deep targets. Sparky's nearly impossible to cover. I hate covering him. But only Timmy seemed comfortable enough to throw to him. And that raises a super interesting question to me is, will Jason Beffel be the most important 12th round pick in Winter League history? And how much of an impact will he make on that team?
Well, I think part of the question is he going to make enough weeks for that to even matter? Because if he's only there for 3 weeks, that might not be enough to make the playoffs. So I totally agree with you that having just one more person who can move the disc and sort of take some of those tougher looks for their offense would be a huge help to unlocking some of those really athletic downfield cutters. And will also make things a lot easier for Timmy, I think, because he won't have to be sort of the only person who can do that.
Unbiased opinion, Lynch's team has the best sideline presence, the best mojo, I'll say. No one else could even...
And the worst looking.
Worst looking. All right, Lynch's shirt needs to be banned. But there are some powers that come with being the commissioner, and it's apparently you can look like Lynch.
Or like Libby.
So I got booted, which is good looking.
I don't really have more to say about that game. Zoe looks like she's a potential season-long MVP. Eric and Lynch both looked very, very good. Timmy looks like Timmy, and the rest of Tina's team looks questionable. So, thoughts on where those teams will end up at the end of the season? Are we comfortable saying Tina's done after week 1? Are we comfortable making that guess? Are we comfortable saying...
I'll give her one more week, but I don't know. I think we're looking at the top half and the bottom half of the rankings here with these two teams.
Gotcha. All right. I don't wanna count my chickens. Last year I had a stunning week 1 victory and ended up in the 8th place game, so
Not just in the 8th place game.
Yeah, we finished 8th place.
Yeah, losing the 8th place game. Important distinction.
Yeah, that's fair. We're going to take a moment to thank Blue Apron for sponsoring us, we hope. And while we're on the subject, sign up for our Patreon. I'm not entirely sure how that works, but I've heard podcasts where they mention it, and it seems to be a way to make money. So
Patreon.com/Brad Katecki.
Or Venmo.
Venmo. Yeah.
Venmo, PayPal, cash.
We'll take cash at the next Winter League game.
So, game 3. Gurgit versus Libby. Gurgit won 15-10. Libby, I have you here. So, what were your takeaways?
Yeah, I think speaking about my team, I think we did a lot of things well that I did not think we'd do well. Just regarding staying close on D, making some athletic plays that I think we all maybe thought was a couple years behind us. I think the killer is just reeling in the throws and starting to make some connections. I think we were all a little overzealous in a lot of the shots that we were taking. All that's definitely not to discredit Gurgat. They had, I think, across the board, their players really brought it. I think that even some of the lower draft picks, I think made an impact. I think that we're going to see that each week is really their full roster contributing to some pretty good wins.
Yeah, I think, unfortunately I had to miss most of that game live because I was warming up and playing in my own game. And afterwards, I was asking people how the game went, and somebody just said, Gurgat's team crushed. And you look at the scoreline and it doesn't look that close. But if you watch the game, it was actually a pretty close game throughout.
It felt closer.
Yeah,
than what it was.
and there was a few points, I think, around halftime, like a couple long points that really Red had a lot of chances. Libby's team had a lot of chances to punch them in. I think maybe it was tie the game or bring it within 1 or something, and really felt like a big kind of momentum moment that eventually ended up not going their way, and then all of a sudden it's a 2-3 point lead, and it kind of stayed that way for most of the rest of the game. But I was pretty impressed with a lot of, like Libby's saying, the players that we haven't seen playing in these leagues in a while. JT had an awesome layout D that I really wanted to put in the top 10 plays.
You gotta put.
I should have, but
you had to put one of yourself.
Yeah, I had to put my own shitty throw in there instead. And yeah, I think I was pleasantly surprised with how well Libby's team managed to play. And also, going into this week, I think Gurgat's team has a lot of talent, but I certainly didn't feel after their first game like they're just going to run away with it, or that they're going to be, kind of like a powerhouse, or that they're going to be the favorite in every single game just because of that. Because I didn't really feel like they put that pressure on in the same way throughout the game that I expected.
So I do think that Libby had more execution errors, things that maybe as those players start playing together more and shake off some rust, they clean up a little bit. So I'm not ready to write them off. But watching Black's game and looking at their stat line, everyone had at least a goal or an assist. Just pretty even production throughout all of them. So maybe they didn't completely dominate, but I couldn't find a weak link. Like, I was trying to see where it would be that you would hammer the disc, try and like cause a mismatch, and man, their team is deep.
Yeah, I agree.
And Hooks wasn't there either.
Hooks wasn't there, so maybe that works for them.
Yeah.
Maybe that works
Take
for the rest of us.
I think what's going to be really interesting is that they have 4 current Case Women's players in Maddie, Vanessa, Kathy, and Annika. So there is only 1 week that we're missing from a tournament. But, if they lose another game or two, that could end up being a really important week where they're missing 4 out of 5 of their women. Trying to find pickups is going to be tough. So, that week is going to be wonky for everybody anyways, but I think particularly so for Gurgat.
Well, we could sit here and talk about how good these teams look and how good they are all night, but really the answer always comes down to who's missing what weeks. Absences play a bigger role. They're the MVP every year. While we're on the subject of MVP, though, I got to ask, is this the year where Amir's perennial run at potentially being MVP is over?
He's got time.
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I think he's got the team around him that can still support that.
Pretty rough assist to turnover ratio. 1 assist, 3 turnovers.
That is a pretty rough start, but everybody has a rough game every once in a while. So I think he'll bounce back in week 2, and I think he'll be back in the conversation. Maybe not winning it, but in the conversation.
I'm excited to see Libby roll. I think at least one week, they're just going to trounce the team. But
hopefully not my team.
Game 4, Felipe versus Iris. Felipe ended up winning 16-14. I think they scored 2 points very close to the end, the last 2, to take it away. So, Joe, you were playing that game. What did you think?
Well, it was a frustrating game. I'll say that. Our team really, really struggled with punching in our chances on defense. And obviously, in this league, you don't really have O-line and D-line, so it's not really a personnel issue. I think there's some mental aspect of just, having to start from a static, or you're a little more excited for the potential to get a break. And, for whatever reason, we really had a lot of trouble taking advantage of those opportunities. And we didn't, our defense wasn't stifling. We didn't force a ton of turns, but we definitely had plenty of chances, even late in the game, where we could have really taken control and gotten a few breaks in a row, and we couldn't take advantage. And so that was definitely frustrating. But I think for it being a week 1, I think that some of those things that we struggled with are going to be relatively easy to fix as we move forward.
Well, you threw 10 assists, and Iris had 7 goals. So your team's looking pretty top-heavy. Do you think that's a fair representation of what you're going to be like? Do you think you'll get some more production from more of the roster? Or are you hoping to ride the coattails of Joe, Iris, maybe Swanee?
I think Iris is so hard to guard. I don't know if there's anyone in the league that can really guard her effectively. So, especially if a team isn't prepared and the whole team isn't on the same page, I think she's going to get a lot of goals or be the focal point of the offense. So I don't really anticipate that changing much.
Yeah.
I definitely think that, as hopefully our team moves the disc more, obviously that was a big problem in that respect in week 1. I think more people will get involved on the assist side of just, our offense running more smoothly as opposed to, me throwing 2 cutters in the end zone a lot, which, worked well week 1, but not well enough. So we're going to have to make some adjustments, and I think that's going to be one area.
Libby, thoughts on the game?
Well, the biggest takeaway was that the commentary in this game was the worst thing that I have ever heard. It made watching it unbearable. So that's just to all those, all you commentators at home, keep that in mind. I do think that, the Joe to Iris connection is, was obviously carrying Iris's team, and I think is going to be, pretty hard for most other teams to be able to stifle that. I do think that Yellow did a better job of utilizing their full roster, and I think that that's, really in the end helped them out to pull off the win. I do think that they picked up Young G, which was
full roster plus,
which was a pretty good upgrade for them, and I think that without him, then you may have seen the game, the results a little bit different. But the other thing I think watching it was, even at the end when we were getting down to the wire, Felipe's team definitely seemed to be more loose. You got that Felipe sass to kind of keep everyone just having fun, and I think that helped as well.
Yeah, I've got to agree that I couldn't watch this game closely. It was brutal. So, we've talked about all the games.
I want to add one more thing.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Yeah, about Felipe's team, and also, to shout out our team, and in particular, I think Linnea, who did a really good job defending Abby Chang, who's the defending. I think was she the female MVP last year, or just for the playoffs? Regardless, she had a huge season last year. She just made the U.S. U24 Worlds team, and I think she had a somewhat of a quiet game offensively. And part of that is definitely first week, everyone's getting used to each other, just finding her space in the offense. But I think Linnea and the rest of our women did a really good job of just playing smart and sort of playing that matchup really well. And that was a big part of what kept us in the game, I think, was limiting her impact. Because if she had had a big game, it probably would not have been close towards the end the way it was.
Yeah, you being Iris's team also ran with 3 women, more than anyone else other than Jackie. You did it 9 times and had a decent amount of success. I think your team looked okay. I think they looked better than the results indicated.
Yeah,
a 2-point game is really hard to. Young G doesn't make that one catch.
Oh my god, that catch was outrageous.
It was nuts. So, any big takeaways from the week? Overarching ideas.
I think one thing that I was a little bit surprised about just playing and then watching was the 4-2-3-3 difference, and how really the game didn't change very much at all. It felt the same, and I think that was something that was really good to see. And I'm hoping that as more players are back in town, and hopefully there's a little bit better attendance in coming weeks, that more teams can continue to push towards that 3-3, and then it continues to be a good experience for everyone. But really it was kind of undiscernible watching the games what the ratio was, unless you were really looking, and that was kind of something that was, a takeaway from one of the big changes going into this year.
Joe?
Yeah, just to expand on that a little bit, I think the management side, from myself, sort of helping Iris as a co-captain, and I'm sure the other captains felt this as well, but in addition to all the other things you're thinking about as a player, and then, maybe as a captain, what kind of adjustments you can make, all that sort of stuff, but then also having to think about, what ratio we're going to use on this point, like who played on the last point, who looks tired right now, who doesn't really look tired but probably is tired, who hasn't played in a while, like, do we have way more men this game? Do we have way more women this game? All the, like, trying to make those decisions during the game was very hard, and harder than I expected, even though I knew it was going to be hard, and I think made it harder maybe for some of the players that are acting as captains to focus as much on the game as they're used to.
Yeah, we always see the league shift a little bit week one. There's usually more turnovers and just sloppier play. In week two is when we start to really get a feel for the teams. But I guess I'll ask right now, any teams that we want to put as we'll come up with some fancy noise and something to call this, some sound effects, but teams that we're willing to say right now, week one, will not make the playoffs.
Crickets.
I agree with that. Last year, 3 of the 4 teams who won the first week did not make the playoffs. So first week doesn't tell us much. Yeah. Are there any teams that we're willing to say are a lock for the playoffs after 1 week?
I'm locking in Gurgat.
Joe locks in Gurgat.
I'm locking in Gurgat.
I think it would have to be Lynch.
I refuse to give Lynch any praise.
Yeah, we know. We've picked up on that.
Just wanted to make it clear.
All right, I'm going to keep track of that, and at the end of the season, we can all either brag or I have nothing. I'm not saying anything. I'm not.
Okay.
You have no predictions?
No. Just a good fun league for the next several weeks. So another thing that we want to try to do, we're going to call this segment You Bred My Mind. I have a subject. I'm going to give you guys one word. I'm going to give you guys the subject, and then I'm going to go to you and ask you what you think I'm going to rant about. It may or may not be related to Ultimate, but I feel very strongly about this. So today's subject is cameras. Whoever wants to go first.
The camera on the second field, number 1, was significantly worse than the main camera. And that's no offense to Pretty Dude Dave. Thank you for letting us use the camera, but it is just not as good, which is part of what makes that game harder to watch. Number 2, not having the scaffold is awful. And there's no disagreeing with that. That's going to be your rant for sure. I'm positive.
Yeah, I was going to go with the scaffolding as well. Also, it seems like, and maybe it's just the excitement of everyone, being back. But it seemed like there was a lot of people willing to chime in on the cameras and the commentary, which is, it's great to have that banter. But especially in the last game, we're an obnoxious bunch.
So I have 3 things written down. Yeah, it's all about the scaffolding. Number 1, worst angle for seeing the field. Watching the games is still obviously much better than not watching them. You can still basically see what's going on, but it's a little harder to keep all the action in. I don't know. But if you're not paying attention, it's kind of easy to lose people from the floor angle. Number 2, we had a lot of plays, particularly in the first 2 games, where there were people standing on the sideline or in the end zone where you couldn't see plays, like goals, whether people caught something in bounds. So if you're listening, stay out of the way of the action. Like that drove me nuts, of people standing in front of the camera, and Joe yelled at them several times.
We're instituting a $10 rule. If you're standing in front of the camera, you owe $10, and we're going to use that money to buy a new scaffold.
Better podcast equipment than a new scaffold.
Priorities.
And 3, and this kind of touches on what Olivia was saying, but it's something that I didn't even realize was a side effect of the scaffold last year, was you didn't pick up any of the conversations people around the camera were having. So people would walk underneath it and be talking, but you wouldn't hear it in the game. This year, anyone who walks by the camera, you get to hear talking about what they did last weekend, or we got to hear Bob explain Netflix and chill, which is just not something that I want to hear while I'm watching Joe's team lose. So that's You Bred My Mind. This week upcoming, we have I guess we'll go through them one at a time, just really quickly, and our predictions. The first game is Tina versus Jackie. Anyone feel strongly?
I think Jackie's going to be able to. I think they're going to get their feet under them, and I think that they'll be able to pull that one off.
Joe?
Yeah, I agree. I think, I don't know if Pinecone's going to be back and healthy, but honestly, I don't think they need him. I think he could sit this game
Who needs
out.
him?
Yeah. Who needs him? Get out of here, Pinecone. I agree with you. I think Jackie's got that one. Next, we have Andrew versus Lynch, which I don't think is the right order of games, but it's the order Lynch gave me. So, Andrew versus Lynch. I know Andrew is missing Evan for layout.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
So I'm going to break my cardinal rule and praise Lynch and say that I think they're going to win.
Is that praise?
It's not. I guess it's not really praise. And I think that Andrew's team is also a very good matchup for them because they have, particularly on the men's side, they have the guys that can match up with Andrew's really sort of top heavy men's side of the team. So I think it's a good matchup for them, and I think Lynch's team is gonna win that one.
Yeah, I would agree.
All right, I agree. Libby versus Felipe. Libby, who do you think?
Oh, I think we got it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. Sound convinced? Joe?
Is Young G playing or
Yeah. Who is
No,
Felipe picking up?
I'll tell you what I'm not gonna let Felipe pick up.
This one is a tough one. I think it's kind of a toss-up for me because I think both teams didn't quite play up to their full potential in week one. But I think I'm going to go with Libby's team as well. I think Amir's going to have a much better game. I think they're going to figure out some of those, kind of missed execution errors that they had in the first
We'll
game.
have Nicole back as well.
They will
We're
have.
missing the first week.
Yeah.
I'm expecting big things from her.
I'm going to go with Felipe, just because I want to disagree with you guys, make it a little more interesting. I have this game as a toss-up. It really just depends on who's going to be there. If Libby's whole team is there and tuned in, playing well, they probably got it, but I'm going to count on that not happening. And finally, we have Iris versus Gurgit, which were the two preseason favorites. So how do we feel about that now after watching the first week? Knowing that Joe might not play?
Yeah, so in classic Iris team fashion, I think potentially 5 of our men will not be there or not play. I have some kind of nagging injury that I've been dealing with for like the last couple of weeks. I don't really know what's going on. I will hopefully find out soon. But there's a chance I won't be able to play. I think we're missing Dima, Milo, Dean, and Joe Baker, which brings us down to like 2 or 3 of our actual men that are on our team. So, Iris thought that she could pick her own team and she would avoid all this, but joke's on you, Iris. We all planned it. So
You can run, but you can't hide.
Yeah. Moral of the story is I honestly don't know because I don't even know what half of our team is going to be yet. But it's going to be a tough game for sure. Like I said, I think Gurgat's team is very good, and we're going to have to play a really good game to come out with that win.
So you're taking yourself? Taking Iris?
I have to. I'm taking myself, especially if I'm playing.
I'm going to bet on me.
Yeah.
Joe Mama. Libby?
Well, after that,
Yeah, I'm taking Gurgit.
that hard sell,
Yeah.
I'll go with Gurgat.
If I wasn't going with Gurgit before, sure am now.
I think their team is just too deep to especially against a crippled Iris's team.
I'm just playing the numbers for the pick'em. Everyone's going to pick against us, and then we're going to win the pick'em. This whole season is about Iris winning the pick'em. Let's be honest.
Didn't she win that last year?
Yeah, but she's got
No. But Danny won it. We promised we wouldn't mention him on the podcast, but Danny actually won it.
Danny who?
Don't remember his last name.
All right.
He's gone. That's all we have. I don't know. I don't know how this ends. Do we just play the outro music? Joe, what are you working on? Any big projects coming up soon? Any of where the fans can see you, can find you?
Yeah, lots of fun Ultiworld stuff going on. Subscribe to Ultiworld. We make sure if you're not, although it's unlikely if you're listening to this that you haven't heard about this, but make sure you're checking out the Cleveland subreddit. And we have the mixed all-star game coming up on Saturday, January 26th. The teams have been picked. There's a Facebook event. It's going to be a really fun game. We're going to film it and afterwards add commentary, produce it, with highlights. There's going to be a fun halftime show hosted by our very own Brad Katecki. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So if you haven't seen anything about that, keep an eye out for that and try to make it out. It should be a great night.
Libby, anything coming up?
Nothing big.
Another new cat coming soon, hopefully.
I wish. I don't know. Can't get any Craigslist posts to respond to me. Yeah, just looking forward to next week.
We'll hopefully be back next week. If you enjoy this, like I mentioned before, subscribe to our Patreon.
If you have any questions or stuff you want us to discuss, you can email us at an email that we haven't created yet. So I guess for this week, just post on the subreddit and we'll take a look at it.
Let's be honest, you all have all of our phone numbers. So you just want to reach out that way, go for it. We are on Twitter now.
We are on Twitter, yes.
But unused. There's a picture of Dave. You'll recognize it by Pretty New Dave.
_Lookoff on Twitter. And we will hopefully, by our next week's podcast, have an email that you can contact us at.
We'll be looking for more guests to come on. If you're ever interested, just let us know. During Winter League, we'll probably keep talking about these things once a week, I hope. Recap, look forward. And then after Winter League's over, I think we might try and shift it into talking about the club season, talking about other things around Cleveland. If enough people are listening and enough people are interested in doing it, I've had fun the last half hour or so I'd be willing to do it. We'll keep going, and thanks for checking us out.